In 2011, the median American household needed 3 years of savings to afford a down payment on a home. Today, it's 12. Your salary didn't drop. Your spending didn't explode. So what changed? One industry quietly rewrote the rules of who gets to own a home in America. And most people have no idea it happened. Let's start with the explanation everyone gives you, because there's a version of this story you've already heard, probably from a financial news segment filmed inside a studio that costs more per square foot than your entire apartment. Interest rates went up. Not enough homes were built. Too many people moved to your city. Remote work inflated prices in places that used to be cheap. And look, none of that is wrong. But here's the thing. Incomplete explanations aren't just useless. They're worse than useless, because they give you something to blame that you can't do anything about. Interest rates? That's the Fed. Supply shortage? That's zoning law written in 1987. Remote workers? Good luck stopping those. So you walk away feeling informed, feeling like you understand the problem. And the actual problem keeps running in the background, completely untouched. Because while everyone was debating interest rates and building permits, something else was happening, something quieter, something with a paper trail. And it started the morning after the worst housing crash in American history. 2008. You know the basics. The mortgage market imploded, banks failed, millions of Americans lost their homes to foreclosure. It was ugly, it was painful, and for the people living through it, it was a catastrophe. But here's what a catastrophe looks like from the other side of a Bloomberg terminal. Opportunity. By 2011, there were millions of vacant single-family homes sitting on the market across the United States. Phoenix, Atlanta, Tampa, Las Vegas. Prices were down 30, 40, sometimes 50% from their peak. Entire neighborhoods of empty houses, just sitting there. For ordinary families trying to rebuild, this was the worst possible time to buy a home. Job insecurity, tight credit, fear. For a large investment fund sitting on a pile of cheap capital, it was the buying opportunity of a generation. Now here's the part that almost nobody talks about. Before 2012, large institutional investors, meaning massive corporations and investment funds, did not own single-family homes at scale. It wasn't a business model. The logistics were a nightmare. The margins weren't there. One fund owning 50,000 individual houses scattered across 30 cities? Nobody had tried that. Nobody thought it worked. That changed with one government decision. In 2012, the Federal Housing Finance Agency launched a program called REO-to-Rental. The idea was to sell thousands of foreclosed homes in bulk at a discount to large investors who would convert them into rentals and stabilize neighborhoods. It sounded reasonable. It probably was reasonable. The intentions were probably fine. But intentions don't write the business model. Incentives do. And the incentive that program created was this. For the first time in American history, the single-family home became a scalable institutional asset class. And Wall Street, being Wall Street, scaled it. Here's exactly how the machine works, because once you see the mechanism, the rest of it makes complete sense. It's not complicated, it's not even hidden, it's just never explained in one place. Step 1. A large investment fund. Let's use Invitation Homes, backed by Blackstone, as the real-world example because that's what actually happened. Starts buying single-family homes, not one at a time, not 10 at a time, hundreds per week, all cash, no contingencies. They close in 72 hours. You show up to make an offer on a house. You've got your pre-approval letter. You've saved for 3 years. You're excited. You've already mentally placed your furniture in the living room. The fund already closed on Tuesday. You're making an offer on a house that's been owned by a corporation for 4 days. You were never really in the race. You were just there to set the asking price. Step 2. Every home they buy gets added to a portfolio. And here's where the feedback loop kicks in. And it's a feedback loop that's beautiful right up until it isn't. In real estate, comparable sales set market value. When a house sells near yours, that sale becomes the benchmark for what your house is worth. It's how appraisals work. It's how asking prices get set. So when an institutional buyer pays above asking price, which they regularly do, because they're optimizing for volume and speed, not price discipline, they just raise the comparable value of every other home in that zip code, which means the next seller asks for more, which means the next buyer pays more, which means rents go up because the cost basis just went up. The fund isn't just buying homes. Every purchase is simultaneously a market-moving event that makes every future purchase more expensive for everyone else. It's a one-way ratchet, and they're the ones turning it. Step 3. The fund now owns hundreds of homes in the same neighborhood. At that point, they're not a landlord. They are the market. And when you are the market, you don't compete on price. You set the price. This is not conspiracy. This is a business model, a completely legal, enormously profitable business model that received a government green light in 2012 and has been running at full speed ever since. And it gets worse, because buying the homes was just phase one. In 2022, investigative reporting revealed that a significant number of large corporate landlords were using the same algorithmic pricing software to set rents. The software is called RealPage. Here's how it works. Landlords feed their occupancy and pricing data into the platform. The algorithm analyzes that data across all participating landlords simultaneously and spits out a recommended rental price. Think about what that means. Competing landlords sharing pricing data through the same system, arriving at the same number. The Department of Justice opened an antitrust investigation in 2023. Dozens of class action lawsuits followed. The legal argument is straightforward. This is price coordination, not through a phone call in a back room, through software. But the effect is identical to a cartel. The rent floor gets mathematically engineered across an entire market, and every renter in that market pays it whether they know it or not. So let's recap where we are. Buying is harder because institutional money drives up purchase prices. Renting is harder because algorithmic software coordinates rental prices upward. The two options most Americans have, both of them got more expensive at the same time through related mechanisms benefiting the same category of investor. That's not bad luck. That's not the economy. That's a system. And it is working exactly as designed. Now, here's something that should make you feel slightly better. And then, immediately worse. We've been here before. In the 1980s, deregulation of the savings and loan industry let S&L institutions pile into real estate with cheap capital and zero guardrails. Prices inflated. Everyone made money on the way up. Anyone who pointed at the risk was told they were being hysterical. Then the cycle turned. Over 1,000 savings and loan institutions failed. The U.S. government spent $132 billion cleaning up the wreckage. Over $350 billion in today's dollars. The people who caused it were largely fine. The people who lost their savings and their homes rebuilt from scratch. Same plot, different costume. The lesson isn't that a crash is coming. Maybe it is. Maybe it isn't. Markets can stay irrational longer than you can stay solvent, as a smarter person than me once said. But being right about the risk too early is indistinguishable from being wrong. The real lesson is simpler. When the incentives all point in one direction and the people holding the controls personally benefit from that direction, nothing changes until something breaks. And here's the gut punch. No significant policy intervention is coming. The lobbying money in real estate and financial services is among the most powerful in Washington. The politicians who would need to act are, in many cases, themselves real estate investors. The same institutional funds that bought your neighborhood also manage the pension funds of the teachers and firefighters who should theoretically be outraged by this. The system isn't broken. It's just optimized for different people than you. So where does that leave you? Because I'm not going to end this video by telling you to write your congressman and call it a day. Here's what's actually useful. 1. Know which markets institutional buyers dominate and treat them differently. The highest concentrations of corporate single-family ownership are in Atlanta, Phoenix, Tampa, Charlotte, Dallas, Las Vegas, and Indianapolis. If you're buying in those cities, you're competing hardest against institutional capital. That doesn't mean don't buy. It means go in faster than you think you need to and look at neighborhoods just outside the institutional buying radius. Funds cluster in the $150,000 to $400,000 price range. Above and below that band, the competition thins out considerably. 2. High interest rates are your unlikely friend. The same rate environment that makes your mortgage painful makes bulk acquisitions less attractive for funds because their own cost of capital rises. Institutional buying slows down when rates are high. That's less competition for you, not intuition, arithmetic. 3. Follow the RealPage litigation. Multiple states are moving toward legislation targeting algorithmic rent coordination. If you rent from a large corporate landlord, there is a real possibility your rent was set by this software. That matters legally. Pay attention to it. 4. Be ready when the window opens. Markets correct. They always do. The question is timing, not direction. The families who bought in 2010 and 2011, right in the middle of maximum fear, built enormous wealth over the following decade. The next window will come. The people who are financially positioned when it does will walk through it. Everyone else will watch. Here's where we land. In 2011, 3 years of savings got you into a home. Today, 12 years won't. That gap didn't open because you made bad decisions. It opened because a specific set of policy choices, financial incentives, and algorithmic tools made it dramatically more profitable for corporations to own the homes you were trying to buy. You were playing a game. Someone else quietly changed the rules, and then changed the software that set the rent on the apartment you moved into after losing the game. Now you know how it works, which means the only question left is what you think happens next. Does this self-correct? Does the math eventually stop working for institutional buyers, the cycle turns, and the market finds its way back to something resembling normal? That's option A. Or have we crossed a line? Corporate ownership of single-family housing is now permanent infrastructure, renting is the new default, and home ownership quietly becomes a class privilege rather than a middle-class milestone? That's option B. Or, and this is the one I find hardest to dismiss, does it get measurably worse before it gets better, and the generation currently renting becomes the generation that never bought? That's option C. Drop your answer in the comments. I read all of them. And I want to know if you see a scenario I haven't accounted for, because those are always the most interesting ones. And if this made you understand something you thought you already knew, that's the point. Because the most expensive thing in this market isn't the down payment. It's not knowing why it got so big.